You've published, taught, and served on committees, and yet the path to promotion still seems to evade you. In this episode, we break down how to build a clear, strategic plan to move up in academic medicine. We interview Dr. Joseph E. Losee, the Vice Dean for Faculty Affairs at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, and he holds the Dr. Ross H. Musgrave Endowed Chair of Pediatric Plastic Surgery. A distinguished surgeon, educator, and leader, he's authored more than 250 publications, edited 7 textbooks, and served as president of multiple national plastic surgery societies. For 2 decades, he led pediatric plastic surgery at UPMC's Children's Hospital, earning national recognition for innovation, mentorship, and faculty development. He also teaches in the Katz Graduate School of Business, co-chairs the UPMC Physician Wellbeing Initiative, and founded Clarity Med Solutions, a consulting firm focused on leadership coaching and conflict resolution. But first, a word from our sponsors. You're listening to Succeed in Medicine, the show for practicing physicians who want to master the parts of their career and life that med school never prepared us for. From interpersonal skills to career navigation to the essential information every physician needs. I'm Dr. Bradley Block, and in every episode, we bring you brass tacks advice and immediately applicable insights from world-class experts, so you can feel prepared wherever your MD takes you and build a life in medicine that's sustainable, rewarding, and actually worth all those years of sacrifice. You've spent years making careful decisions with lasting impact. When it comes to investing, the same principle applies. Lightstone Direct gives you access to institutional quality real estate investments with decades of proven experience behind them. Invest directly, no middlemen, and a $12 billion plus asset under management real estate firm in your corner. Remember, all investments involve risk. Please visit lightstonedirect.com for a full list of disclosures. Dr. Joe Losee, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Brad, for having me.
So let's get right into it. In prior episodes, we've discussed, to avoid burnout, to make sure that your time is being used in ways that you are intentional about, prevent you from being overwhelmed. The model of when opportunities come your way, you're either going to say hell yes or no. Because the fear is that we've been so conditioned in medicine to say yes to everything that we end up saying yes to everything. And it's not in our best interest to do that for our mental health, for our time, for work-life balance. But I've heard you say otherwise. And so can you explain that?
Yeah. So, like everything in life, it's complicated, right? It's complex. It's not a yes or no. I grew up in a very black and white kind of family and culture. And the biggest lesson I think I've learned in life is that there's no such thing. It's all shades of gray, right? So it varies. And all I can say is what happened to me. And I'll preface that by saying you can say no, but as much as you need to be careful about saying yes, you need to be careful about saying no. Because here's the scenario. As somebody sitting around a table trying to figure out who's going to be the next committee chair of this big national committee. And the folks are at the table are sitting there and they say, hey, what about Brad? He said no to me last time and I just don't think he's interested. And there you go. You're not part of that. You miss that opportunity because you got the reputation for saying no. I understand the argument about being intentional with saying yes and with saying no. But people have asked me as a visiting professor, I just turned 60 when I became a professor a long time ago, and I was on a visiting trip. Some of the residents said to me, how did you get so far, so fast in your career? And the answer was 2 things. One is because I had mentors and that opened doors and then pushed me through. And the second was I said yes to everything. Now, having said that, when I started practice in 2000, my husband at the time, neither of us had any other thing. We loved academic medicine and well-being for us.
So he's also a physician, to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 physicians now.
Academic pediatric anesthesiologist. He's the anesthesiologist in chief at our children's hospital. So in 2000, we didn't have kids. We loved what we did. And we would spend all day Saturday and all day Sunday in the hospital. We'd have lunch together. We had a whole group of medical students working with us. We'd take them out to dinner on Saturday night. And for us, for wellness and what it got us excited and got us was working on Saturdays and Sundays on research and working with our teams and stuff like that. And so in the beginning, I said yes to everything. Now, I didn't say yes to things outside of my interest, but I said yes to everything in academic, in education. I said yes to things in my subspecialty of craniofacial surgery, and I said yes to things at our national society. I didn't say yes to things like in hand surgery or microsurgery that I wasn't involved in, but anything that I was involved in, I said yes. And that skyrocketed me. So I ended up being president of our national society, president of our program director society, president of a bunch of things. But that's because I laid the foundation early on to say yes, 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 yes. And they would be like, hey, you want something done? Ask Losee. He'll do it. And so for me, that was well-being. So it's all personal, right? I mean, yoga for some is good and meditating for some is good, right? Well-being is different for everything. Well-being for Franklin and me at that time was spending Saturdays and Sundays in the hospital, working with our research teams and having a blast. That's not what wellness is for me right now. I have a teenager and wellness is going to his varsity soccer game on Saturday, which I've looked forward to. And when Hudson came home, I became professor the year that our son came home. I didn't go to the hospital on Saturdays and Sundays anymore because it was the phases of one's life. So it's really hard to say. I saw a podcast that said the solution to well-being is saying no. And this was by our national society. I almost wrote them and is like, how horrible is that? Yeah. That is not the solution to well-being. It may be the solution to well-being for somebody, but if you keep saying no, then don't come and complain to me later on that you're never asked to be a committee chair and you're never asked to be a leader because you've said no so much. So it's a real balance.
But I mean, that's a very specific situation, right? Like, I want to push back on this a little bit. The reason being, like, you were married to someone in academic medicine and at the time didn't have children. And so your life lent itself to that because of your interest, your significant other's interest. So it was easy to say yes to those things because that happened to fit in your life at the time. And that may not be the case for many other people where they have a significant other who's not in medicine. They have responsibilities at home. And also, like you said, follow your interests, right? And so some people might have interest in research. Other people might not have interest in research. Like, for instance, I went to the Medical Society of the State of New York meeting a couple of years ago because I thought it would be a good thing for me and my practice. They just discussed a number of things that were like, I just wasn't interested in them. It didn't bring me joy or interest or anything like that. And so I tried saying yes, but it sounds like your particular situation was a very specific one that there might not be a lot of overlap with a lot of other people.
I think I totally agree with you, 100% agree with you. But if you look at the leaders in our societies today, I teach a couple of leadership courses. Sacrifice is the dish that you have to eat if you want to be a leader. You can't be a leader and be free in the evenings and on the weekends. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Bad things happen. That's why the average lifespan of a dean in the United States is 5 years.
Yeah.
Because people just can't do it forever because it's like the sacrifice is too great. So I think, our friend Jesse, right? Like, he gets the stuff done. He has to get it done. So he does it in the mornings. He does it in the evenings. He does it in the weekends. And he's still an amazing dad. He makes it happen. So I think you have to follow your passion, right? If your passion is progressing in academic medicine, or in business, or in law, or in politics, you've got to put the time in. You've got to say yes if that's what you want, if you want to be a leader in that field. Sacrifice and in service, it's the backbone. So the best thing is to do is follow your passion. If that's what you're passionate about.
Yes to all of the things that you're passionate about. If someone asks you to be on a committee and it is so far from your interest, not that like you're craniofacial in its hand, but like it's a policy committee and you have no interest in policy, what you're saying is you don't necessarily have to say yes to that, but figure out the stuff that is of interest in you, pursue those things, try and get on those committees, and then get used to doing the work that's given to you, get known in those spheres as someone that says yes to the work because it's in your area of interest, and kind of pursue it in that direction.
Exactly.
Okay.
So for like our national society, I was never involved in membership. I was never involved in advocacy. I wasn't involved in policy. Not that policy has now become more of a focus of my life as I've matured, but at the time it wasn't. So I threw myself into education and into the things that interested me.
Yeah.
But when those things came up, I said yes. Now, granted, I was in a season of my life that lent itself to that. And I get it. And so I also say you need to schedule the soccer games of your kids on your surgical schedule, just like scheduling a clinic or scheduling an operation. You schedule when those soccer games are so that you can go to that. So
you have to find a way to make it work. Something else I've heard you talk about is just when you say yes to so many things, you also have to find ways to be efficient with your time. If you become known as someone who says yes to things, you're also someone who's able to get them done because you do make a way, you find ways for it to fit in your schedule. So there's less standing around. I'm fortunate to be a swim dad. And so we were at a swim meet this weekend over 2 days, 6 hours a day. He was in the pool for maybe 5 minutes each day of that time. And so that gave me a little time in between to make sure I didn't miss the race. That gave me like 5.5 hours on each day to do other work. And so it happens to work for me, right?
Absolutely.
But your life now, where you can't miss those soccer games, how do you decide now what you're saying yes or no to? Does it still follow with what I'm passionate about? That's how I make those decisions.
Yeah, it's definitely what I'm passionate about at this point. It's different seasons in your life. I mean, I've come to probably the final quarter of my academic career. And so I get to be a little more judicious in what I say yes to and no to, and to balance but I have a lot of irons in the fire in different things. I'm very lucky. I still have a boutique surgical practice. I teach in the executive MBA program, a course called Health Insurance and Funding U.S. Healthcare. I'd love to talk with your brother. And I teach leadership courses and I do coaching, and I'm the vice dean for faculty affairs. So I'm doing all these wonderful things that I've been blessed to be able to do. And so I have to be a little more judicious in what I say yes to, but they're all things that I'm passionate about.
But blessed also because it's return on investment from working those Saturdays and Sundays that then made those things, that investment is paying off.
Yeah. It's like your son, if he wants to be an Olympic swimmer, he's going to have to get up early, work really hard. It's going to have to be his passion, and he's going to have to put the time in to do it. And it's the same thing for leadership. I talk to some mid-career faculty who are like, I never get asked to do anything, and I'm thinking, well,
that's our next question. So that's the perfect lead in. So what do you say to those faculty members? So you got a faculty member who doesn't seem to be getting promotions or positions that they expect, right? And they come to you, and what do you tell them?
Well, if we had the time, we'd have a little coaching session and we'd look into how did you get here? Where do you want to be? And how are you going to get there? And why haven't you gotten there? And try to diagnose the problem as to why. I mean, have you done the work so that people ask you? And today it's getting easier because less and less people want to do it. And maybe that's just my perspective. And maybe it's because I'm old, and faculty today are maybe more balanced, or they find less meaning in society membership and committing oneself to an entity and giving and donating all of your time to that. And so I think maybe for those rare people who want to be the leaders and are willing to give up the time, it may be a little more easy now, because I don't know, I hear other people think about that, and I wonder myself if this upcoming generation is inclined to give away so much of their time and dedicate so much of their effort to those kinds of things. I don't know. I think we'd have to explore that with that faculty.
So what would you say to a faculty member who was trying to balance pursuing their passions? These are where my interests are. Maybe their interest is in advocacy. Maybe it's in teaching. But at the same time, their department is asking more from them in areas that they're less interested in and less passionate about. And so how do you strike that balance of pursuing the versus what's being asked?
Certainly today, the requests and the requirements and the expectations on clinical faculty, from what I can see, have become very demanding in clinical care. And there's less time to follow those passions than probably when I was younger. So you have to be more creative. I think often of a colleague of mine who I tried to recruit here at Pitt many years ago, and his wife would tell me they'd go on vacation, and they had a bunch of little kids too. And she would get up in the morning, go in the bathroom, and there Aaron would be sitting in the bathtub with his computer at 4 o'clock in the morning, trying to get his work done and some research done so that on vacation, when everybody got up, he'd be free and would have the day to work. You've got to really be passionate about that, right? To do that kind of thing. And that's not healthy and well-being and professional fulfillment for many people.
Yeah.
But for those that it is.
Is the return on investment really there? For those who sacrifice for the hospital, for the institution, right, in trying to be of service, is the return on investment there for a lot of them? Because I feel like that's what I'm hearing, is the hospital doesn't love you back. You give to your patients is one thing, but giving to the hospital, and then they hire someone over you, and then they fold your department into another, and then they ask for more call response, right? And then what would you say to the people that say, listen, the reason I'm not willing to give is because I feel like the hospital doesn't love me back?
Yeah, completely. I totally get and understand that. And my reward has been interesting. So yeah, I have dedicated a lot of time and energy as the division chief for 20 years to the Children's Hospital, really. But where I guess I find my reward was in program development. So it's not so much like to the entity of the health system that I've dedicated my time, but in the 25 years, we built programs. So we developed a cleft and craniofacial center that didn't exist when I came there. And now it's a full-fledged, functioning, funded place that's going to go on forever. So whether or not the health system treats me well or does something, that is an enduring product that brings me great satisfaction. Folks like our friend Jesse, other faculty that I've recruited early on and watched their careers grow and blossom. When I was the program director for 13 years, and the countless fellows and residents that we trained who now text me when they have kids or when they become program director or when they become chair and thank me for being their mentor. That's the kind of reward, right? So the health system can fire me tomorrow. They can hire somebody over me. They can make corporate health care. We can call it whatever we want. That, which I know what you're talking about. I totally get it. They can do you wrong, but they can't take away from you all of the investment and the enduring and lasting products in the lives of the patients that we've taken care of and the trainees and the junior faculty that we've mentored. And that brings real meaning in medicine, right?
And so what I'm hearing is the work itself is the reward. So when you're deciding what participation you're going to have, it can't be in order to climb the ladder. But the examples that you gave were really things that you found meaning in, irrespective of if they helped you got promoted through the academic hierarchy. That the work itself ended up was so rewarding, that was the reward.
Yes, but if I didn't do the work before that got me the position of the program director, or if I didn't put in the time and energy and effort to be the division chief, and to take all those problem calls at night and in the morning and do all the sacrifice and service that we talked about earlier, I wouldn't have been in the position to invest in the lives of all those. So it's kind of hand in hand, I think.
Okay. That makes sense. If you like this podcast episode, you're going to love the podcasts over at the Doctor Podcast Network. For instance, Telemedicine Talks. Telemedicine is revolutionizing healthcare. Dr. Lee Damasco and Phoebe Gutierrez of Telemedicine Talks bring you to the forefront of this digital transformation, featuring insights from pioneers and practitioners. Stay ahead of the curve, subscribe to Telemedicine Talks, and navigate the future of medicine with confidence. So what advice would you have for a senior faculty member? Because what you just talked about is how important the mentorship was and how much that means to you. So if you have a senior faculty member who wants to be a mentor, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah. Being a mentor and being a mentee, it's a two-way street, right? I mean, and it takes responsibility and effort and energy on both. It's like a marriage or any other real important relationship. You have to work at it. And if you don't work at it, it's not going to, and keep it fresh and keep it, it's not. So if they're really interested and they have something to give and they haven't experienced that, well, then I would share with them the meaning in medicine that can come from being in that role, and then help them find that meaning by serving in that capacity.
And let's say you have a new assistant professor, they've just started. They've listened to the prior discussion that we've had about following your passions and taking the responsibility and putting the work in order to set yourself up for success. Is there any other advice that you would have for a new assistant professor who's interested in really staying in academic medicine and pursuing that academic career?
Yeah, I think if I had the opportunity to talk with them for quite a while and to figure out who are they, what do they want, where do they want to go, do they want to be an academic doc and just be a good physician, train residents, take good care of patients, and really have no aspirations for leadership, which is just fine, or they don't want to do basic science research. That's different than somebody who's like, listen, I want to be the next president of this. I want to be the next division chief. And that person, that's a different conversation. It's a different story. It's a planning out of when are you going to get your advanced degree, your MPH or your MBA? When are you going to do this? What programs can we get you involved in? What committees can I help you get on? What doors can I open and push you through? What opportunities can we create so to get you involved? What things can you start saying, yes, 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 send me in, coach, right? Because you got to kiss a lot of frogs before you find a prince. And if you want to be the next president of your society, well, geez, you better be on a whole bunch of committees, because only one or two of those committees is going to lead to committee chair. And then from that committee chair being the vice, whatever they call it, for that service line in that area. So you got to have lots of irons in the fire, not too many. So that irons in the fire comes from ancient blacksmithing years and years ago. If you have too many irons in the fire, then the heat gets dispersed and not any one of them are hot enough to bend. So it's a balance of that between kissing a lot of frogs to find a prince. It's a balance. You've got to say yes enough so that that committee service will lead to becoming the committee chair and then the vice president of that service line, if that's your goal, right?
But you've got to decide, what you're saying is you've got to decide that goal early on. Like, do I want to be department chair? Do I want to be president of the state society? Do I want to be president of the national society? Do I want to be? So you're saying that has to be decided fairly on in the career so that you can decide the trajectory. Not that you can't springboard from one to the other, but what you're saying is you really should have an intentional trajectory in mind so that you can map out how to get there. And then if you change your mind, pivot, but there should be a plan.
I think that's ideal. So in the leadership courses that we teach, I have a little exercise to define, to write your vision and mission statement. So your vision is your North Star, your mission is your compass. Your vision is your purpose, your mission is your plan, meaning 1, 3, 5, 10-year goals. What do you want to do? Let's sit down and think about it. Do you really want to be president of your national society in 10 years? Then in 5 years, you got to be the vice president of whatever turns you on in that society. And so your mission or your vision is your North Star. Who do you want to be? What do you want to be? And then your mission is how you get there. And so having that thought process and going through that exercise as early as you can, it can be helpful. As you said, doesn't mean it's going to change. I mean, I started off, I was a teacher before I went to medical school. So I knew I liked education and I wanted to be a program director. And I became a program director, and then it was like, this is great. What can I do next? I want to be a department chair, and then I want to be president of our educator society. And then it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah.
So I never sat down and said, I want to be the vice dean. 25 years ago. That wasn't even on my radar, but I knew I wanted to be the program director. And so dreams don't come true, plans do.
You didn't have a vision board? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
It was
I
a
don't know.
plan board. It was a map. It wasn't a vision board of hopes
Right.
and dreams. Yeah.
Right.
So I've heard you say that your time as program director has been your favorite part of your career so far. And I want to give a shout out to my sister-in-law, Lauren Block, who was just named program director of the Northwell Internal Medicine Residency Program. And so this is a personal question for her. She just started. What is your advice for her as a new program director? By the way, she didn't ask me to ask this. So
Congratulations. Congratulations. I think Sandeep Jahar, who is a cardiologist who wrote a book called Doctoring. And this was written a long time ago, before burnout and well-being was really a big deal. But he talked about finding meaning in medicine and well-being. And that is by being vulnerable to your patients and to others. I think what made being the program director so meaningful for me. So I've done UME and GME and now CME and, medical students and residents and now faculty. I think, like you said, that period of time, those 13 years of being program director probably is going to be the most meaningful, because we got them for 6 or 7 years. And a lot of stuff happens in 6 or 7 years, but you have to be available and you have to be interested and become part of their lives and let them become part of your life to find that meaning. A lot of things happen. Parents die, grandparents die, folks get married, they have babies, they lose babies, they get divorced. I've held many hands in the ER and on the way to the OR when we had the ruptured appendix and bleeding ulcers and all kinds of things that happened during those periods of time. I can remember I was at a meeting once. We were all standing around. It was one of our national meetings in black tie, and a whole bunch of leaders were there, and my phone went off, and I looked at it and I was like, oh, it's one of my residents. And I stepped aside and took a call. And it wasn't a bad thing. Like something good happened. They got a grant, or I don't know, they got engaged or whatever. And who did they want to call? They wanted to call me and tell me about it. And so I came back, and another program director in this little group was like, who is that? I was like, oh, it's one of my residents. And I told them what it was about. And the guy looked at me and goes, you mean they're free to just call you at any time? And I looked at him, and in my mind, I'm like, what the heck? If you ask a question like that, you don't deserve to be a program director. I mean, if you're not available for them 24 hours a day, just like you would be for your kids, don't expect then for them to be sitting at your bedside when you're dying. It's like your kids, right? I want my trainees to call me and text me and email me when good things and bad things happen in their lives, because that's where the meaning comes, right? It's not the destination. It's not the journey. It's the company along the way. If you want meaning in being a program director, then you've got to become vulnerable and let them know you're interested in their lives and what happens to them, the good times and the bad times, and sit and cry with them when bad things happen. And I think that's what drives the meaning and why that was so important for me.
Something we've mentioned on the show and is out there in the zeitgeist is the importance of relationships in happiness and longevity. And what you were preaching is that this isn't just a professional relationship, but that they see you as a mentor, as a friend, who's someone that they can turn when they're sad or they're happy, and look forward to sharing things with you. And instead of keeping them at arm's length, involving them in your joys and your sadness and your successes and your failures, so that they feel welcome to do the same and see you as someone just beyond the clinical skills and position.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like being a really good division chief or a really good department chair versus just being the boss.
Yeah.
I mean, the Harvard happiness study, right? That's now in its 70th some year. And it was a study. It's a great book. I'm starting to read it right now. It talks about what brings happiness in life. And it's the Harvard happiness study. They've been following this cohort of men for like 70 years now. And the take-home message from the whole thing is it's relationships provide meaning in life. I mean, it's really basic. So you want to find meaning as a program director, as a division chief, as a department chair, then you've got to find, it has to be about relationships. And you know that your department chair has your back. They care about you. They're sacrificing for you. You can call them at any time with good news or bad news, and they're excited to hear about it. And just like a parent would be. I mean, being a program director is a lot like being a parent.
And it's their formative years, like
Absolutely.
as physicians, as surgeons.
Medical school's great and all. Like, I get it, right? But it kind of just builds the foundation, lays the
Yeah.
foundation.
Growing up happens in residency and fellowship.
Yeah. Your career is built on the foundation that you got in medical schools. But there are plenty of program directors who see it as a job. They sign paperwork. They make sure things are done. They do this, they do that. They don't really get involved in the lives of their residents. And that stuff is fine too. But I bet you they're not going to look back. They're going to be more like, oh God, when can I get done with this job? Like, pass it off to the next person. You know, it's too much work. Versus the person who looks back and says, that's one of the most meaningful periods of my life.
Yeah.
Because I became so close. And so, I mean, I was the best man in weddings. I mean, good and bad stuff. Yeah.
That's fantastic advice. And I think we'd be remiss to not discuss one more thing, which is Clarity Med Solutions. You're a consulting firm focusing on leadership coaching and conflict resolution. So tell us a little about Clarity Med Solutions.
Yeah, thanks. What I do now as the Vice Dean of Faculty Affairs, I do a lot of conflict resolution. I do a lot of mediation. I do a lot of coaching. I co-direct a peer coaching program. So I really like that kind of, the 90% of my effort is really taking care of faculty, which means crucial conversations and difficult conversations and mediation. And so I became a board certified coach, and then I went and became a mediator. I'm not going to be mediating divorces or refrigerator disputes. I'm qualified to do it.
You don't have refrigerator disputes among the faculty? Someone ate my sandwich?
Yes, those kinds of disputes. But so that's what I do, and that's my day job. But I think as I get older and want to maybe someday tone it back a little bit, then this is sort of a company that is a consulting company to do that now. It's hard for me to really be a coach for a faculty when you're their dean. They're not going to open up and say, I'm having an affair and this is why I'm struggling and my life's a mess. They're not going to come to your office and kind of like unfold.
Not if they're looking for promotion. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
This is why I'm a mess. Yeah.
But I like that kind of stuff. So I sort of have to do that in my private practice. What I'm currently excited is pre-litigation, early dispute resolution with mediation. So as physicians, we all know that bad things happen in the hospital every day. As surgeons, bad things happen. Mistakes happen during spine surgery. The
pedicle screw nicks the aorta.
The X-ray tech comes in, hits the field, and drives an instrument through the spinal cord. Bad things happen in the hospital all day long. What happens? The physician feels devastated. They're injured. They feel horrible. And what do you do when you feel horrible? As a wounded animal, you hide, right? Or your instinct is to hide. One physician dies by suicide every day in the United States. Highest rate of suicide in any profession in America right now. So the physician's suffering. Certainly the family is distraught. They're devastated. The hospital is scared, so they lawyer up and quiet down. The physician is not engaging because and so what does the family feel? The family feels abandoned. They feel like something bad must have happened. The hospital's not talking to me. Where's the physician? And so what do? They get a lawyer. I have lots of friends who are lawyers. But what's the lawyer's? The lawyer's incentive is to make as much money off of this settlement as possible. So do they really want resolution? No, they want a big fat check. So CMS has recognized this, and they've written books about it, and it's kind of along the theme of restorative justice. What it is pre-litigation, early dispute resolution with a mediator. So the patient relations will come to the family, and they'll say, hey, listen, everybody knows something's bad's happened. Let's sit down and talk about this. The physicians feel terrible. The nurses feel terrible. Your family is devastated. Here's a list of mediators. They have nothing to do with our hospital. They're just independent folks like me. And you pick the one you want, and we'll bring them in. In most states, mediation is non-discoverable. I mean, almost every state that I know of, that's the case. Bring the physicians who are struggling, the family who's devastated, with a mediator. And this is what mediation's all about. Mediation is applied coaching. The mediator caucuses with the family and then gets everybody together. The intention is not that the family doesn't have a big settlement. If you paralyze their infant, the hospital wants to give them a big settlement, but it takes away the bitterness. And the data shows that it can provide healing both for the providers and for the family.
So are you saying that there's a way to get them a settlement without the lawyers being involved?
No.
Okay.
Nope. So this is the pre-litigation part of this, where the mediator comes in and works with the family and with the physicians and providers to try to bring some healing. That doesn't mean that the provider and the hospital's trying to get out of a settlement. The mediator isn't there to mediate money, to try to restore some kind of working relationship and provide some healing for everybody involved.
Absolutely.
Certainly, the family, they deserve a settlement. If something really bad happened, they do need compensation, and that will be determined later on.
This is an episode unto itself that I'd love to explore, because it sounds like there will likely be fewer cases, because a lot of times the family just feels slighted. And when they don't feel that way, they feel like they're being heard. They're able to see the physicians and discuss it with them in an open way, see that the physician genuinely cares, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure it will spare some litigation. I'm sure.
Well, yeah, it'll take away the bitterness part of the litigation. Some docs know this, right? Some docs just don't get sued. I had in my training, it was beat into us that you run to your complications and hover. And I've had some pretty devastating. I had a young child that was paralyzed in the operating room. They had a cervical spine anomaly that we didn't know about. And the kid had a very tiny jaw that I was operating on to try to protect their airway. And the anesthesiologists were doing, and the ENT docs were doing a lot of manipulation, and the baby was paralyzed. And it was devastating for everybody. And so I hovered. I mean, and this is what I beat into my residents, like you hover and you be there with the family. You sit there and cry with the family. You sit there, and that's what they want. A lot of patients and families, when bad things happen, they know bad things happen. And if we could have open communication and honest discussion, and a mediator provides that protected space.
Yeah. But just to be clear to those listeners, you can provide excellent care, be an excellent communicator, and still get sued. These types of things, they limit the risk, but there will still be risk. It still happens, even if you provide the best care.
My residents have said my superpower as a doctor is to have the patient's parents feel worse for me than for their kids when bad things happen. We all have complications, right? Yeah. And I remember being in the room, like talking about that. I was so upset, and the dad got up, came over, gave me a hug, and was like, Dr. Losee, don't feel so bad. We know that bad things happen and that you did your best. Yeah. And that, I guess, maybe is a superpower that I have, because I really do care. And I'm totally fine with sitting and crying with a family who's devastated. And not everybody is that. And they're not trained, and they're like just not able to unfold like that. A mediator can help and can really lessen the pain for everybody involved. So I'm really excited about that. I obviously can't do that here in my health system because I'm clearly biased. So that's another part of the consulting company to allow me to do that kind of, just like we all do medical malpractice, legal, a lot of us do that kind of stuff. That's okay. It's really not all that meaningful to me, but this is, if I can help a family, a patient, and a physician that's hurting.
Because it's the relationships.
Yeah.
Comes up again. That's the relationships. Reviewing a case, not a relationship.
Yep.
Really touching these families. Well, Dr. Losee, you are an inspiration, and all that you've done with your career and continue to do so. How you found the time to record this podcast with me, I have no idea, but I appreciate you taking the time.
Brad, thank you very much. It's been an honor. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. I have a favor to ask. You listened to the episode until the end, which means either you fell asleep or you really liked the episode. So please write us a 5-star review, take a screenshot, and email it to me so I can send you a quick guide on how to earn patient trust in 20 seconds or less. Email me at brad@physiciansguidetodoctoring.com and feel free to suggest a topic or guest. I take your requests seriously. The views expressed on this episode are those of the interviewer and the interviewee and do not represent the views of their employer or even their significant other. even though the magic of podcasting makes it sound like I'm talking directly to you. This is not a doctor-patient relationship, and this is not medical advice, or financial advice, or legal advice, or really any advice. Thanks again for listening to Succeed in Medicine.